allerlaatste actie van de reguliere speeltijd. We zitten in minuut nummer 95 inmiddels. Kom op El Amadi, doe het. Laat die Kuip ontploffen. De bal ligt links van het 16 meter gebied. Daar is de vrije trap. Daar is hij. Ja! 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 Hij gaat erin! Feyenoord wint! Feyenoord wint! Feyenoord wint met 1-0! We winnen! Feyenoord wint met 1-0! Maar wie maakt hem? Ik weet het niet. Is die bal geraakt? Ik weet het niet. Was het El Amadi? Was het Kuit? Was het Kramer? Het maakt niet uit. Het is 1-0. We worden gek. 1-0. Wat een feest. Wat een orgie. Wat lekker.
Hello and welcome back to the Football Town Show. I'm your host Adam, and as always, I'm joined by Jacek Kulig. Jacek, how are we doing today?
Hi Adam, it's great to be here again. Today we will talk about Feyenoord, so one of the greatest Dutch teams, a club that had so many great footballers and coaches. And I'm really happy that we are joined today by our fantastic guest, Johan.
Yeah, Feyenoord, a club with highs and lows, I'd say, throughout their history. Had the recent Arne Slot era where they came from nothing to be Dutch champions and now a fixture in the Champions League this season. So definitely a lot to unpack. And to join us along the road, as you mentioned, we're joined by Johan from the Kein Geloel podcast. So Johan, it's great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. How about you guys?
Good. Johan, the one question we had right from the bat, Kein Geloel pod. We had difficulties pronouncing it, and we still don't know what exactly it means. So why don't you talk us through that name?
It's basically it's a fun name. We had a coach in the 70s, Ernst Happel, which is an Austrian guy who was basically the most successful coach we had at Feyenoord. And he spoke German, and German and Dutch is like kind of similar languages, even though it's not the same. And he tried to speak Dutch, and he always said Kein Geloel voetbal spelen, which basically means stop fussing around. Let's play football. It's not correct Dutch, but everybody still remembers the sentence Kein Geloel. And we thought it was funny because we make a podcast about football in which we can talk hours about football. But Kein Geloel basically means shut up. So that's the name of the podcast we came up with.
I like that it's original. I really like that. I think it's cool to do a Feyenoord podcast, but not go for kind of the simple and easy name. So I definitely applaud that. And on the topic of Ernst Happel, I knew this name from somewhere, and he's a real legend of Austrian football, right? I mean, we talk about him in the Feyenoord context, but the Ernst Happel Arena, this is I think the stadium of Rapid Wien as well. So. Yeah, I would say even bigger than just a Feyenoord legend, a real football legend himself. And Johan, we always like to ask our guests what their first memory for their topic was. So when we talk about Feyenoord, you're obviously Dutch yourself, so maybe even someone who's kind of grown up in Rotterdam will find out a little bit more about that. Are you someone who really grew up with Feyenoord then, or was it a passion that came later in life?
No, I both of my parents hate sports, so it's not something that I grew up with from my parents. But I had my neighbor who used to babysit me when I was younger, was like 8, 9, 10 years old, and he was always talking so passionately about Feyenoord. He had a season ticket, and he always talked to me and my little brother about Feyenoord. And one day when I became 10 years old, he gave me a birthday present, which was a ticket for a Feyenoord match. So my brother and me went to the match. We won 5-0. Our favorite player scored twice. So from that moment onwards, we were hooked, and we started to follow everything about Feyenoord. And we went to the stadium. And when we were old enough to go to the stadium on ourselves, we bought a season ticket. And so it's not from my parents, but it's from my neighbor who always talked so passionately about Feyenoord.
And I mean, I guess it's never polite to ask the age of one's guest, but I'm going to ask you then a little bit, swerve around the question, but ask it at the same time. You said you were 10 years old, so what era of Feyenoord are we talking about here then?
We're talking about 1993. I am 41 years old, so I was born in 83. So I should have been 10 years old when I went to the first match. We played against VVV. A smaller team in the south of Holland. And like I said, we won 5-0. So that was my first memory.
Adam, I think it's a historical moment for our podcast. For the first time, I'm not the oldest one. So, wow, thank you, Johan, for that. I
Uh,
can't really use my weapon of saying, okay, I'm the oldest one, so I remember everything better than you guys. But yeah, Adam, what about your first memory of Feyenoord?
Yeah, difficult. I don't have really that many vivid older memories of Feyenoord because I'm obviously the youngest. I mean, Jacek is a 90s kid. Johan, you yourself, I guess, are a bit of a 90s football fan as well. And growing up, I mean, I'm born 2002, so my football memories really started in the 2010s, 2015s, and it wasn't necessarily the most prominent era of Feyenoord. You know, when I think of Dutch football, I think of Ajax first and foremost, and I think of PSV, and then even I thought of clubs like Twente before even Feyenoord. That was kind of the clubs in my era, and Feyenoord was a historic club, no doubt, but never really on the same level of some of these other, in my eyes, giants of Dutch football. But I mean, as we'll get to today, Feyenoord is alongside Ajax by far the biggest giant of Dutch football.
I think it was also a little bit of a banter era of Feyenoord. We all remember the defeat against PSV. I still see the image in front of me with Dini Wijnaldum still playing for Feyenoord and the board with the results. So yeah, these were some difficult times. You were born in 2002, so just before Feyenoord had one of the greatest successes. So the final of UEFA Cup with an amazing Pierre van Hooijdonk. Probably Pierre van Hooijdonk is my second memory. My first memory was a game Feyenoord against Juventus in the UEFA Champions League. I remember watching the highlights at midnight. I was 10 years old back then, and I wasn't like allowed to watch them, but I was waking up and putting TV on and watching these highlights, and I will never forget the performance of Jerzy Dudek. Every success of a Polish player back then was something really, wow, amazing for me. Back then, we were struggling a lot. We didn't have many players in top clubs. So I remember watching these incredible saves of Jerzy Dudek and me being so excited that I couldn't sleep for 3 hours. I said, wow, what a player do we have in Jerzy Dudek.
there's a lot of Polish players at Feyenoord that did very well. Of course, there was Smolarek, his father. I never saw his father play, but that was in the 80s. His father was playing for Feyenoord and Utrecht as well. We had with Thomas Gaza, which was also a team member of the 2002 team that won the UEFA Cup. 2 years ago, we had Szymanski, who of course played for Feyenoord and became champions with Feyenoord. So there's a nice history with Polish players at Feyenoord, but I can understand Dudek is definitely one that's also my favorite Polish player. Yeah.
You also had another goalkeeper, Zbigniew Małkowski, as well. Well, he wasn't even close to Dudek in terms of quality. And you also had, I think, at the same time, Tomasz Iwan, a winger from Poland, if I'm not mistaken, like 20 years ago. So yeah, I think like Feyenoord is the most Polish club out of the big Dutch three.
Yeah, with Markowski, everybody said that he was going to be the successor of Dudek. Everybody expected him to do as well as Dudek. I think he only played 1 or 2 games at Feyenoord at the first team. He was talented, but not good enough to play for the first team. At Feyenoord, we have the tradition that at the beginning of the season we have a helicopter in which we present the new players. So everybody says every time there's a helicopter in front of in top of the Feyenoord stadium, everybody's like, "Oh, there's a new player coming." And everybody, of course, knows which players are coming out. Everybody knows which players Feyenoord acquired. But there was only one time there was a surprise that we got a player that nobody in the stadium, which was at the start of the season. And then the helicopter came, and then there was Marek Saganovski. He was a striker, and everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" It was not in the newspapers back then. There was no internet, of course. So everybody was like, "Okay, this is gonna be the real deal." But he kind of failed. Afterwards, he had a nice success, but not at Feyenoord.
He was considered as one of the biggest talents in Poland. Sadly, his career didn't really go the right way, but I remember reading the article, like the trio of Rotterdam with Ivan, Dudek, and Saganowski. It was so exciting because like in the 90s and then like till 2010s, Polish football was struggling a lot. For example, the best player of the Polish Ekstraklasa, Andrzej Niedzielin, went to NEC Nijmegen. So right now we have players at in Napoli, like Juventus and all these other teams. And back then we were excited that our best player in the league goes to NEC Nijmegen.
Yeah, for those at home playing football talent show bingo, we've had our mention of Poland and a lot of 90s football. So it's going exactly the plan for Jacek so far, but I'll swerve us a little bit more to our show notes here. Let's talk a little bit about the fan base in Feyenoord. I think it's one of kind of the biggest elements of this club, the Het Legion. You can definitely correct me on that one, Johan, if my pronunciation is wrong, but the Legion is what it would translate to in English. And for me, when I think of Feyenoord, I almost think of the fan base before I think of the football sometimes, because it really is such a big part of the club, one of the most underrated fan bases in Europe. So talk to me a little bit about how important that is for the club and its history.
It's like you said at the start of the show. Feyenoord is considered one of the two biggest clubs in Holland. Even though, if I have to be honest, and I don't like to be honest in this way, but if you look at success and titles, Ajax is by far the best team in Holland. But second is PSV. They have won, I think, the league 22 or 23 times. Feyenoord only 16 times. So we've been outperformed by PSV the last basically 2-3 decades. But if you look at fan base, then we're by far bigger than PSV. Here in Holland, there's two clubs in which the media writes all about the television is always about Ajax and Feyenoord, even though both of them or one of them is not having a good season. So Feyenoord and Ajax are the biggest clubs on a supporters stand view, and we're kind of proud of that. We've been suffering lots of lot of bad seasons. We've not been doing well. The expectations in Rotterdam are always way higher than we can actually perform. But we always go out there, and well, the 10-0 defeat against PSV has already been mentioned. I always hope that people forget that, but some reason it always comes up. But I think what typically Feyenoord stands for, 3 days after that defeat in Eindhoven when we lost 0-10, there was a home game against VVV, and the stadium was filled. Everybody was there, and everybody was there to support Feyenoord. We won 3-1, and basically that's what Feyenoord supporters stand for. We're loyal as hell. We always go where, even if when we go away, we play away games. When we play away games in Europe, we're always there. So we're kind of proud of that.
Yeah, I think when I look at kind of Feyenoord, Rotterdam in general, it reminds me so much of Schalke 04 and Gelsenkirchen. I mean, Rotterdam is a true working class city. It has a working class identity, a reputation for this hard work, resilience. Then you look at Gelsenkirchen, another pure working class city, a coal mine city. So people who really hard labor throughout the day, and so much love for the club. Like you say with Venlo, going to the match after such a harrowing defeat and coming out with numbers. I mean, Schalke is the same exact way. They're in a relegation battle in the second Bundesliga right now, and they continue to fill that 50,000 seater stadium every single week. Or you have kind of derbies against Dortmund in the past. They're 4-0 down at halftime when Peter Bosch was the coach there, and they continue to support the side, come back, make it 4-4. It's really kind of the parallel I see between those two fan bases and those two clubs. That's kind of the best way I could put it.
For example, when I talk to young people about Dutch football and I say the Dutch Classico, the Klassieker, they always think that it's between Ajax and PSV. But the real Klassieker is between Feyenoord and Ajax. It's the true Klassieker, and the game between Ajax and PSV is called Topper. And about fans, I really love to watch these Klassiekers. You can just see the passion. You know what? It reminds me a bit of like when Osasuna plays Real Madrid. You see these fans, you see this passion. They are almost ready to get on the pitch and beat the other players. So I really enjoy watching these games, and I respect the passion so much. Of course, there is also this hatred towards Ajax. I'm not the biggest fan of hate, but you can just feel that these fans are ready to do just anything for their club, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and why don't we stick with the rivalry of Ajax then? Looking kind of through it from a historical perspective, you kind of have to pinpoint the 60s and 70s, I would say, as kind of a key turning point in this rivalry. Because we mentioned, of course, Feyenoord and Ajax, historically the two biggest clubs in Dutch football. But the 60s and 70s was really the era where they were not only the prominent clubs in Holland, but also in all of Europe. Both clubs really had huge successes. I mean, okay, domestically, between 65 and 80, 13 of the 16 league titles went to both the clubs. So truly dominating the domestic front, but also in Europe. I mean, some of the biggest achievements for both clubs was during that era. How much did that almost incite this rivalry to a whole new level that has prevailed until today?
It's hard for me to look into that because I was born, like I said, in '83. But the history of Dutch football is basically, I guess, in those years. And Ajax always has the name to play the total football, and also with the Dutch national team, which was lots of Ajax players. But the slogan at Feyenoord is always the first. We were the first Dutch team to win a European prize, which was in 1970 when we beat Celtic. The coach was Ernst Happel, like we already talked about. He was also the coach who went up to coach the national team in 1974, which became second at the World Cups. And Ernst Happel played also the total football, because that's the problem we have at Rotterdam. We've always been put in a way that is say like hard working class. We are Rotterdam is a hard working class city. Ajax is more the fantastic, brilliant, good-looking style of football, and Feyenoord is the hard-working football, tackles and all that stuff. There's some truth to that, but Feyenoord is also the club which had Koen Moulijn, which was an amazing left winger in the 70s. Feyenoord is also the club who had Robin van Persie. Well, I don't have to talk about how talented he was. So we've also brought up very nice-looking players. But the rivalry was back then wasn't as hostile as it was right now. Back then, players switched from Ajax to Feyenoord and back, which is still sometimes done, but a lot of more hostility than back then. But I think that has to do with the fact that after the 70s, when we were the best of Europe, the best of the world, we also became world champions. After that, Feyenoord were not able to build on that success, and we see Ajax, they build on that success, and they've been a dominant team basically in Europe for like their whole existence, while Feyenoord extremely dropped off and had those terrible seasons. And every now and then they had some life in them again, and they had some good results in Europe or in the domestic league. But that's what frustrates us Feyenoord supporters, that the success we had back then never got built into futuristic success, and now we're at the point that, well, we kind of think we're ahead of Ajax right now, but are we still? We don't know. We don't know. We will see.
I think the main slogan of Ajax fans is "We zijn Ajax, we zijn the best," which translates to "Yeah, we are Ajax, we are the best." So it should be very annoying to hear that from a Feyenoord fans perspective. And do you think that the role of Johan Cruyff played a huge role? In my opinion, yes. Like Johan Cruyff was from Ajax, he went to Barcelona, and he spread his philosophy outside the Netherlands. So it was probably the key factor in Ajax becoming what they are today.
Definitely. Johan Cruyff is, of course, a legend. He was probably the best player from Holland that we ever had. Had a fantastic career as a player, but then also as a coach. Of course, all the success with Ajax, and also later on with Barcelona. It's kind of fun. He ended his career with Feyenoord. He had a dispute with Ajax, and his last season, in the season I was born, the year was I was born, 1983. He switched over from Ajax to Feyenoord, and we won the double. We won the Dutch league, and we won the cup. We kind of think that's funny to tease Ajax supporters and say, well, he hated you so much, he wanted to end up his career with us, but he's still known as an Ajax player, not as a Feyenoord player.
You can tell from that it was definitely a different era of football back then. I think the world football doesn't make players like Johan Cruyff anymore, and I think it's quite sad. Like I mentioned before, with kind of the city elements of Rotterdam, this real industrious working class identity, it's also very interesting to parallel that to what Amsterdam is, and where Ajax come from. From me, Amsterdam, especially as kind of a foreigner, but someone who is 2 hours away in West Germany, Amsterdam is always this very cosmopolitan place, very liberal. I mean, we of course have the red light district, the marijuana side of things, but also many other elements before that. It's also always gives off this image of being a very affluent city with kind of high society almost. And again, when we parallel that to what Rotterdam is, it feels like almost more fuel for what this big rivalry is.
That's why we hate them. Ajax, like Jacek already said, their slogan is "We are Ajax, we are the best." Even though they became fifth or fourth in the league last year, and they haven't been performing for the last couple of years, they still have those big mouths. A resident of Amsterdam always thinks that Holland ends with the borders of Amsterdam. They don't think there's anything outside of Amsterdam. So that arrogance we hate it in Rotterdam, and I think it's in other countries as well. There's a huge difference between the capital of the city and the working class cities like Rotterdam is, and it's the two biggest cities of Holland. Amsterdam is the biggest, Rotterdam is the second. So
I must say that I visited all three of them. So Rotterdam, Eindhoven, and Amsterdam. I didn't really enjoy Amsterdam. I'm gonna be honest here. Eindhoven is my favorite city in the Netherlands, and I visit it quite often. But I visited Rotterdam 2 years ago with my girlfriend, and the thing that I like the most. So I went straight to Varkenoord. Of course, it was my thing. Oh, I need to visit the academy, and my girlfriend, he knows it. So we took a boat, and then okay, we go to the Feyenoord academy, and I went there without even like saying to people, I will be there. I just went there and got inside. And at first, I met this person in charge of the academy, and I was ready to hear the answer no to my question. Can I visit the academy? Can I go and make some pictures? I will make a nice post on my socials. I showed him Football Talent Scouts, and he said, "Of course, feel yourself at home." And I was shocked. I was really shocked because in Belgium, if I would do the same thing with Anderlecht, they would call police on me and they would say, "Go away! You can't. It's trespassing." No, and there, the guy was so nice. And one more thing that he told me, such a shame that you didn't come 5 minutes before. There was Robin van Persie, and you could make a picture with Robin van Persie. And I was really, I was shocked and thrilled at the same time, and so happy being able to make these pictures and visit all these stadiums that I watch, well, mostly on YouTube when Feyenoord under 19 or under 17 plays. So it was really amazing. I enjoyed the city a lot. So yeah, beautiful city, beautiful club, and beautiful academy.
Yeah, yes, I think your story almost kind of comes to the core of Feyenoord as a very down to earth club, working class people, working class attitude, working class mentality, and it's also reflected in the football. I think is that something you would go along with, Johan?
yes, like I said, it's we've always been known as working class football, but I think the last couple of years, especially on the Arne Slot, which we'll probably still talk about, there's been a new kind of play which we wanted to see so badly because we love football here in Rotterdam. I think we are even more passionate about the football than for example in Amsterdam or in Eindhoven. So when Feyenoord plays, you can feel the buzz in the city.
Yeah, Johan, I can tell that you come from a podcasting background because that's the perfect gateway into our next big topic here, the Arne Slot era, of course, from 2021 to 2024, titles in Holland, in the cup, in the league as well. Then, of course, some deep runs in Europe. But let's go back a little bit before then. What was kind of the mood like upon Slot's appointment in 2021? What club was he inheriting?
It was good to know that he came at like basically the worst time in the last couple of years we had at Feyenoord. We had the COVID the pandemic. Then we got Dick Advocaat, who took over from Jaap Stam, who was sacked quite early in the season because he had a terrible run at Feyenoord. It was a complete mismatch with Feyenoord. We still don't understand why he was appointed as after Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Then Dick Advocaat took over, and then in that first season before the pandemic really hit us, and in which the season was cancelled, Dick Advocaat did okay. No, he did good. I should say he did good because we were like 12th in the league when he came, and at the end, when the season was cancelled, I think we were third with only a couple of points behind Ajax and AZ. And AZ at that moment had a coach which was called Arne Slot. It was his first season at the Eredivisie, and he was doing amazing. His name was already been rumored for a couple of years. This is the real deal. He's such a good coach. He was assistant at AZ for a couple of years. And then when Johan van der Brom left, then Arne Slot became the coach of AZ. He did very good in his first season, but then the season got cancelled, so there was no winner of the season. And the season afterwards, he did very good. But then Feyenoord wanted to find a new coach instead of Dick Advocaat, who was having a terrible season at Feyenoord. We became fifth. And then we talked with Arne Slot, and we were amazed that he was interested to go to Feyenoord, because everybody thought he's going to Ajax after Ten Hag is going away, because he's had a good success at Ajax, and everybody was thinking that he was going to a big club, which he did, of course. So everybody expected, okay, Arne Slot is going to be the next coach of Ajax. But then he said, okay, I'm interested in the project that Feyenoord has. Let me go there. So he came at the worst time. We were fifth. We had to play the preliminary rounds of the Conference League, and there was a lot of skepticism. Everybody was like, is he a match with Feyenoord? Because he likes to play attractive football. He likes to press high. So everybody's like, that's a completely different than what we had on the Dick Advocaat, which was very defensive and only concerned about not getting goals. So everybody was very curious how he would do, how he would end up, and well, the end result is he did very good.
Yeah, I can only say for me that Alkmaar squad, I think, yes, we've spoken about it a few times, but I was absolutely in love with that Alkmaar squad throughout COVID. I think I've never watched more football than during the coronavirus period. And that AZ team with the likes of Jesper Karlsson, one of my favorite players who I fell in love with, Teun Koopmeiners, who one of the most complete midfielders I've ever seen. So Arne Slot obviously had the raw materials available to succeed, but also what he got out of young players was just astounding. And like you said, it's why all the signals pointed to him going to Ajax, because it would have been kind of the traditional path that made so much sense. So, yeah, very, very interesting to see that he went to Feyenoord, but ultimately it played out in his favor.
There are many similarities in appointing Arne Slot to Feyenoord with Jurgen Klopp going to Liverpool, actually. I remember Jurgen Klopp was also linked with so many huge clubs in Europe, and he went to Liverpool in a very difficult period, and he completely changed them. And I think Arne Slot did the same thing with Feyenoord. Why I love Arne Slot and why I was so positive about him going to Liverpool is the fact that he has the charisma. Eric Ten Hag, I know that all the people hate Eric Ten Hag right now, and they will say he's not a good coach. Eric Ten Hag is a great tactician. Peter Bosz is a great tactician, but I think Arne Slot, out of the three, is the guy with the most charisma. But even despite that, when he was moving to Liverpool, I said it's a good choice, it's the best choice, but he will struggle a lot because you can't just replace Jurgen Klopp like that. You can't just replace a coach with this philosophy, with so many years, and coach who is an absolute legend for a club. And yeah, Arne Slot, thanks to his incredible character, he's doing marvelous things for Liverpool. And I am a big fan, but I am still slightly surprised. He's exceeding my expectations a lot, and it shows how much of a coach and how much of a man he is.
Yes, it's not surprising for us that he went to Liverpool and he's doing up. He's doing so well over there, because when he came at Feyenoord, there was a lot of expectations, and he exceeded expectations by a landslide. We were kind of annoyed at Rotterdam when the rumors were there that he was going to Liverpool, and all the Liverpool fans were like, "Who is this bold guy? We don't want another Erik ten Hag. We don't want a Dutch coach who's not doing well." So we were like, "Okay, you're not allowed to have him. We'll keep him here." But then, of course, he went to the Liverpool, and he's doing amazing. And we already thought he was the best coach in the world at this moment when he was at Feyenoord. Of course, we have the Feyenoord glasses on, so we're kind of biased, but we're very proud, and we think it's very fun that he's doing so well at Liverpool. So it's not a surprise for us, but all of the Feyenoord fans are following Liverpool very closely this season, because it also feels a little bit as our success what he's doing at Liverpool.
Yeah, I think what Jacek mentioned there, and what you also said as well, Johan, the charisma is such a vital piece when going to the Premier League, because the media is just so different than in Holland. It's so different than in Germany as well, right? I mean, you also see kind of a little bit like how Tuchel and Klopp fared in England, how different that was, because just Klopp is also just far better at handling media and handling external pressure. And that's something that I think Arne Slot is really made to do. You see kind of that he exudes confidence, he exudes a mentality, and he's not almost too caught up in his own ideas. He's able to kind of disperse them and gather other opinions when needed, and also be ready to adapt to new challenges.
And that's why Eric Ten Hag didn't succeed in England, in my opinion. I would even say that he even betrayed his own philosophy after being attacked, and there was too much pressure on him. He started doing some tactical misjudgments and got lost at one point. But still, in my opinion, he's a very good tactician and a good coach. He just doesn't have what it takes to manage a huge club from the Premier League. And Arne Slot, he has it. And one more thing about him, which I really love, is like making players better, finding players, right system, right roles, and just helping them fulfill their potential. I think the main example right now is Ryan Gravenberg, an amazing talent like 5 years ago at the toekomst of Ajax, and right now he's probably one of the best midfielders on the planet. So he finally found a coach who plays him in the right way, and I think, yeah, Arne Slot and Ryan Gravenberg is a mix out of dreams.
There's a similar story at Feyenoord when he arrived. Because Feyenoord had Luciano Gertruida, which was a defender who was doing very well at the academy. He already made his debut, and he played quite a lot on the Dick Advocaat. But the overall sense at Feyenoord was, yeah, he's good, but we don't know. And he wanted the contract. There was a contract issue. His contract was almost done, and Feyenoord was thinking about not renewing his contract because they were not completely convinced that he was going to be a vital player for Feyenoord one. And then Arne Slot took over, and he said, first thing that needs to be done is renew his contract, because he needs to be one of the first guys that I'm going to be working with. And we all know how that ended up. He became, well, basically one of the best players at Feyenoord for the last 3 years, 4 years that we had. He played so well, and that is exactly the same as you've been mentioning with Gravenberg. And what I really like about Slot, I also want to add that up. At a podcast, we had a lot of interviews with players that are first team players, but also substitutes. Even though the substitutes they didn't get a lot of minutes, all the substitutes said this Arne Slot guy is the real deal. I love him because he's very transparent. He's clear. He tells me why I'm not playing, or why I'm being subbed off, or why the other guy's playing more. So even the substitutes always said Arne Slot is the best coach I ever had, and you don't often hear that, and that shows how charismatic he is, how smart he is. He's a very smart guy. He's very good with media. He's funny, which also helps in England, and it's also helped here in Holland. He's the real deal. I think he's gonna be the best coach in the next 20 years or something.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't wanna slate Ten Hag, because as we said, I think we're actually all quite big fans of what Ten Hag can deliver, or at least two of us. I'm not sure about what Johan's opinion is,
I
but
like
I
slaying him.
mean,
I don't like him. So
okay, well, the majority, at least on the Football Talent Show, are fans. But I mean, you compare then, for example, the whole Jadon Sancho fiasco, right? A player on the bench not getting minutes, and how that was handled from Ten Hag's perception. And I know, I think the microcosm that is Manchester United also makes things far more difficult for any manager. I don't think it's as simple to say that had Arne Slot gone to Man United, everything would be working perfectly for him. I don't think that would be the case. I think Liverpool is also much better place to adapt for a coach like that. But still, I think there are some critical areas in player management, even all the way back to that Alkmaar team, which I spoke about, making a guy like Koopman as captain at such a young age and trusting him with so much. Also getting the most out of guys like Myron Boadu or Calvin Staines, who have never been able to replicate that since. It shows just how good he is at this man management aspect that is critical in the current game.
I think Arne Slot is not only a good tactician but also a good psychologist. So he and as you said, Johan, he's a very cool guy, you know. So if you look in the interviews, you say to yourself, okay, he's a guy I would like to go for a beer with. And I had the same feeling with Jurgen Klopp, honestly. When you watch Jurgen Klopp, see, he's a human being, a normal human being that could be your neighbor. And I think Eric Ten Hag, as I said, Adam, you said that we are big fans. I'm a big fan of Eric Ten Hag being only a coach, a tactician, but not a big fan of the other side, which is extremely important as a coach. So being an educator, I don't think he's great at it, at least at a Premier League level.
The fun thing I should say is because I'm a Feyenoord supporter since '93, so we know our place in the food chain. When we have good players or good coaches, they leave to bigger clubs and where they can get more money and in bigger competitions. So I've seen a lot of players that I really loved leaving Feyenoord, but I was never as struck when Arne Slot left because he was like you said, he gave us something back that we lost for so many years. He gave us the belief that we were the best of the world. We didn't play Madrid, but I'm sure that if we had played Madrid, we as Feyenoord fans thought, okay, we're gonna win, we're gonna beat them. I don't care how good they are, because he gave us back something. He played such good football. The results were good. He's so charismatic. Every Friday he had a press conference, and all the Feyenoord supporters tuned in at work to watch the press conference. And that's crazy. It's crazy because he answered questions in a way that you and I should talk when we're at a bar. He respected the journalist. He respected also the fans. So he always gave clear answers, no bullshit. So yeah, I was struck. It still hurts me to say that he left. I would have loved him to stay forever at the club, but I know that's not realistic. And we had 3 years of him, and that's already one season extra than I expected when he did so well the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of the club press conference when he came in at Liverpool when asked, "Oh yeah, Jose Mourinho's the special one. Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm the normal one." And I think that's very very Arne Slot like as well. And it just bears repeating also what club he took over and where he led them in the end. So he took over a club that finished fifth in the previous season. It was their worst lead finish since 2011, and they were 29 points off of Ajax. So their arch rivals were miles ahead. And I think it's also important to mention he came into a side that then lost a guy like Stefan Berghuis to Ajax. So a guy who had 18 goals and 14 assists the previous season. You're basically losing a critical player in a bad side. I mean, how are you going to go further? You're trying to basically even just stay where you are when those are kind of the settings you come in. And then we fast forward only 3 seasons, and we have a club that finished second in the 2023-24 season after winning the league title the previous year. And still, even though they didn't win the league title, they actually accumulated more points than they did in the league title winning campaign and won the Dutch Cup. And I think the most interesting aspect of all is kind of the flip around of Ajax. So if you remember, they were 29 points off of Ajax when he took over, and 3 years later they finished 28 points ahead of Ajax in the standings and beat Ajax 6-0, enacting Ajax's biggest defeat in Eredivisie history. So, I mean, truly remarkable kind of the change of fates. And we're talking about a 3-year window here, right? I mean, we're not talking about a decade in charge where this squad was completely revolutionized, like what Jurgen Klopp did, for example. Let's not forget how long Klopp also needed to really see kind of the first big successes. Arne Slot did this in a much, much quicker manner at Feyenoord, and I think that can't be spoken about enough. So talk me through a little bit of these 3 years, and also for you kind of the, let's say, 2 to 3 key moments that will stay in your memory forever.
Well, there was a lot of skepticism when he came, especially from the journalists here in Holland. Everybody's like, there's a mismatch. Arne Slot doesn't fit Feyenoord. So his very, very first match was in the first round of the qualifications for the Conference League. That's how badly we performed the season before. We ended up fifth. And we played against Drita, which is a club from, I think, Bosnia. It's so small. I never even heard of it. And it was a dreadful game. We played 0-0 over there. It was like one of the worst games I've ever seen. And all the journalists, everybody here in Holland was like, see, there you have it. Arne Slot is not a match. It's not good. Well, then the return at home, we got down by 2-0. They scored 2 quick goals. And in injury time, we scored a 3-2 in which why we advanced. So we almost got knocked out by Drita in the very first round of the qualification for the Conference League. And then we ended up almost winning it, unfortunately losing in Tirana against AS Roma. So that's one of the critical moments. From the first moment on, I think his fourth league match was against PSV. PSV was way better. I think they had 66% the ball. But still, we won 0-4 because he made some tactical changes. He always plays 4-3-3. But then that game, he played a kind of 4-4-2 with Guus Til as a kind of striker, which he really wasn't. But what helped him that his start was so good. He did so well in the beginning, even though the Drita games were terrible and we almost got knocked out by Drita. But after that, he felt okay. I have some confidence by the fans. They support me. They seem to like me. Even though the squad, if you look at the squad he inherited from Dick Advocaat, wasn't that good. Lots of players left that summer. Lots of players also left that winter. I think he had a complete turnaround of the team he had when he started working with from at the end of the season. And yeah, then he basically let the foundations for the year after, in which we weren't the favorites to win the title. Everybody was expecting Ajax or PSV to win the title, and then we had a remarkable season in which we won basically all the games, and unfortunately got knocked out by again AS Roma in the Europa League.
What you mentioned about like judging a coach after 1 or 2 games, it's so crazy these days, and you see it quite often on social media. Even some really bad journalists make these claims, and you can see it with Ruben Amorim at United. He's having a very slow start, and people already saying, yeah, he's not good. He will be sacked. Come on. And but Johan, where would you rank Arne Slot since you support Feyenoord? Like your top 3 coaches of Feyenoord since you started being a fan.
Well, every Feyenoord supporter always would say that the biggest coach we had is there he is again, Ernst Happel, because he won for us. He won the Champions League in 1970. But I've never seen him coach. I don't know what the impact was back then. So for me, I've been going to the stadium since '93. Arne Slot is number 1 by far, not even close by any number 2. Bert van Marwijk, who won the UEFA Cup and then also had very good success with the Dutch national team, only becoming second at the World Cup in 2010, I think, in South Africa. So Bert van Marwijk did very well at Feyenoord as well. He's a very good second. And of course, Giovanni van Bronckhorst had a 4-year spell at Feyenoord, in which he became the champions for the first time in 17 years, which is also an amazing result. So he's going to be my third on that list. But even though I respect Van Bronckhorst and Van Marwijk a lot, because they did also a lot for the club, Arne Slot did so much more, even though his tenure was only there for 3 years. But like Adam said, the team he inherited, becoming 5th in the league and barely making the Conference League from becoming the champions, playing well in Europe in the Champions League, for example, the away game at Atletico Madrid, we played so well. That's amazing turnaround that he has been achieving, and that's why he's my favorite coach by far, and I hope him to see him back one day in the Kuip, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Maybe if his children are homesick, but his children are already old, so no, I don't think we're gonna see him back again.
You can believe me or not, but I was ready to put my money that your top 3 will make a Slot, Van Marwijk, and Dio. I was just not sure how you will rank them, but I was quite sure that yeah, your top 3 will be like that, and it's quite obvious, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. And when we look to the present now, so the Arne Slot era is over. The tears maybe haven't dried yet, but football goes on as it always does. And in his place came Brian Priske in the summer. Also an interesting coach. Feyenoord had a pretty slow start to the campaign under him. Maybe the media in Holland responded in a similar vein to Arne Slot's 0-0 draw in Bosnia and probably wrote him off immediately. but the campaign has kind of been gathering steam. They're unbeaten in the last 10 league matches, so quite a good run of form now. They're getting into their trot now, and I would say the Champions League especially has been a pretty remarkable success. There's still a little bit to go. They're kind of hanging in the middle there. Not yet sure which way it'll go, but victories over Girona and Benfica are really big results, I would say, especially that victory over Benfica. And also, I mean, that draw against City. We're recording it 2 weeks after, and I think that's still kind of lingering in all of our memories. Coming from 3-0 behind, getting the free draw in spectacular fashion. So talk me through a little bit about these opening months of the season.
Like we in the podcast often say, it's a schizophrenic season. It has two phases. We have some excellent results and we have some terrible results. We won the Super Cup at PSV, which PSV at this moment is playing fantastic football and they win everything. But we won at Eindhoven with penalty kicks. We won the cup. So first game of Priske was immediately a prize. Then we had a very slow start in the season. The football was kind of okay. But the results were not that good. We are very unfortunate. We are at this moment the team in Holland with the most mistakes that led to a goal by the opposition. Our goalkeeper is not doing that well this season. Made a couple of mistakes. The defenders are not making a couple of mistakes. Lots of injuries. That's a big difference between Arne Slot and Brian Priske. When we had Arne Slot, we were always the most fittest team on the field. We always were looked more athletic, more fit than the opposition. And this season, everybody seems to be injured. So that leads to a lot of changes in the squad every time. That we played with the fifth striker like a couple of weeks ago, because our first three strikers were injured. Our player who can play on the striker position was also injured. And then when you had a youth player, so Pequeno Redmond, then made his debut for Feyenoord. But that's basically our fifth striker in the squad. At home, we're not playing that good, but away, like winning it in Benfica, playing that well at Manchester City, winning at Girona, which was kind of lucky. The results are kind of okay, but at home we're not doing this well. Normally we always win at home and we play terrible on the road, but this season it seems to be completely flipped.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean we mentioned of course the fan base, also the Kuip Stadion, a true cauldron atmosphere. It's definitely one that fans have to go to if they get the chance. But you mentioned obviously the injuries and the fitness itself, and that got me wondering a little bit. We always talk about managers leaving, but it's also often that these managers bring the backroom staff, they bring kind of physios also sometimes. So just a question from my side, I don't know if you have the answer to it, but who actually went with Arne Slot to Liverpool? Because was it kind of an entire club restructuring that had to take place, or was it just kind of the head that departed in the summer?
We were very scared that he was taking everybody with him. He only took basically one assistant coach, who also assisted the Dutch national team, Sipke Hulshoff. He took the head of the physio department, Ruben Peters, and he also took one scout. So basically, there's still a lot of guys left, but we quite often mention Ruben Peters, which was the guy who kept the players fit. Well, Liverpool is struggling with lots of injuries at the moment as well, so I don't know. It's too easy to completely blame it on the head of the physical department. But yep, the rumors at the beginning of the season was that Priske was training quite hard, lots of running, no balls involved in the first couple of weeks. And there's been a couple of questions by insiders who say, well, I don't know if that's the smart decision because well, with all the injuries, it's not fluke anymore. There's too many injuries. There's a pattern, and that needs to be examined because there are too many injuries at the moment.
I guess the good news for Jacek is that the head of the academy is still there to let him into Rotterdam if he ever goes by again. So Arne Slot is not taking him to Liverpool. Jacek, you're still welcome into the academy at some point.
Of course, and I am planning to visit the academy one more time in the coming months for sure. I think one more thing about the current Feyenoord squad is that do you think, Johan, that two absolutely crucial players like Mats Wiefer and Lucharel Hidroida were replaced? I think it was kind of a mistake that they weren't really replaced properly. of course, you can't just replace the leader of midfield like Mats Wiefer and the leader of the whole team like Gertruida. But yeah, I think the transfer window was kind of disappointing.
I completely agree. We thought we had a terrible summer with all the signings. Because basically 3 crew parts left. Geertruida, like you mentioned, Weeford as well, and also Yankuba Minte, which was a loanee from we loaned him from Newcastle, I guess. They sold him to Brighton. So there was 3 players that left, and we got a replacement for Geertruida, which was Lotomba, who we got from Nice. He's been doing quite well the last couple of weeks, but also he's been struggling with injuries. And last week it was announced that he's going to be missing the next couple of months because of an injury. When he played quite well. He had an iconic rush against City, even though he was playing right back defender, and he crossed the full field to even though Haaland was trying to pick the ball off him, but he was strong, so he was not losing the ball to Haaland, which was quite fun to see. We kind of replaced by a Korean player, Inbom Wang, who we got from Red Star Belgrade. He wasn't a defensive midfield player over there, and also not playing for Korea. He's been playing at that role at Feyenoord, and he's doing quite well. But sometimes we're still vulnerable, especially with when we lose the ball and we have to defend. At that part, Weaver was excellent. He was always overseeing the field and know where to stay. Wang has a tendency to run up front, which Timber, who plays next side to him, has that as well. And then and of course Minte, we thought we didn't replace anybody. Ali Reza Jaanbaks, who wasn't a regular, but he was a kind of replacement at right winger. He also left because his contract was done. And we got this guy from Vitesse, Anis Hajmusa. We had no expectations when he came, because the reputation from him when he played at Vitesse, that he was not defending. He was not he was a cancer in the locker room. So everybody's like, okay, we spent 2 million on this guy. Yes, he has some skills, but if he doesn't defend, he probably won't be playing any minutes. And at the first couple of weeks of the season, he didn't play at all. But last week he's been the best player, and he's been scoring 5 goals in his last 6 games. Also 2 goals in the Champions League. So the summer was not that good. We got some good players, but the unfortunate part is we haven't seen enough of them yet, because everybody seems to be injured all the time, except for Wang. So knock on wood, I hope he stays fit, because he's very good.
Yeah, and I can't wait to go into some of these names more in depth in our talent show, which will release the following week after this one. I think especially with Gertrude, the issue there is the fact that you lost him on deadline day. I think that can really not be understated. A true captain, a true leader of defense, and then you're losing him so late in the window. That's always impossible to replace. I mean, we mentioned, of course, the fact that Jordan Lotomba has come in and done really well. And even, for example, replacing Mats Wiefer is another one. You just can't replace a player like Mats Wiefer at Feyenoord. It's a truly elite talent who is ready for a top club. And at Feyenoord, you don't sign players from top clubs. So you're going to need at least 1 to 2 years to kind of develop a player to be ready to fill the boots that Wiefer had when he left. So I think that's almost natural that this has happened to Feyenoord at this stage. You're in a position that's typical of clubs in the Eredivisie.
Wiever is a perfect example of how Feyenoord scouting has been going for the last couple of years, because he came from Excelsior, which back then played at the second league. He came in for I think we bought him for 500,000 euros, so he was very cheap. And the first couple of months he didn't play at all. Also, he had kind of a small injury. And when he came from Excelsior, everyone was like, "What? Why is Mats Wiever going to Feyenoord? He's a good player, but he should go to Utrecht or Vitesse or Groningen first." And then because Timber got injured in the winter break in the season that we became champions, then Wiever got inserted into the lineup, and from that moment it started clicking, and we started playing so well. And it's the same with Haj Musa right now. It's a player that we got on a cheap. I think 2 million is not that much of money, and already he's been beating expectations. So that's unfortunately, of course, we want to see signings with big names coming in. I guess Wang is something like that, because he came from a Champions League side last year who also played against City, for example. But we like to see that at Feyenoord, because we've been seeing Ajax and we've seen PSV do it to get bigger names in. So we hope that that's the future for Feyenoord as well, that we don't only bring in talents and projects, but also players that are there right away.
Yeah, I'm an absolute fan of Mats Wiefer. I think that, I mean, our player roles, like Mats Wiefer could be one of the prime examples of a holding midfielder. So he's not a guy who will be running or who's extremely fast, but his positioning and game intelligence are just something else. He's not the most enjoyable player to watch for casual fans, but the work he does on the pitch is simply amazing. So a great player. I would love to see him in the Premier League for Brighton. I think it was a logical move, and for Hertroida, I think it was also a good move for him. I know, Johan, that you will hate it, but it was the time for him to move abroad and to move to a higher level. You know, there were some players that stood in the Eredivisie slightly too much, and then their careers didn't really flourish. And I think it was the moment for Hertroida, and he made a really good choice by choosing Leipzig.
Yeah, I think he still has so much respect in the Feyenoord fan base. I think I saw a video a few weeks ago where he returned to the club and kind of got a standing ovation from all ends. It shows kind of what a player, what a leader, how mature he also is for his age. I mean, this is still a young talent, and we're seeing a player that has such a good head on his shoulders. So seeing where his future goes will be super, super interesting. And he is one of many from the Feyenoord Academy. And when we talk about the Feyenoord Academy, I think that's how we'll round up the show for today. There's so many names that are worth mentioning. Guys like Robin van Persie, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, Jorginho Wijnaldum, Nathan Ake, Stefan de Vrij. The names go on and on and on. So, Johan, tell me a little bit about how important the academy is to fueling Feyenoord's success and also identity as a club.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. I think it here in Holland, you see that Ajax at the moment as well. When things are going good, clubs often seem to forget how good their academies are. And the same way, the other way around, because Feyenoord in 2009, 2010, when we lost for the last time, I will say 10-0 against PSV, that was like the worst period ever that we had at Feyenoord. And the year after, all kind of young players left, but then it was especially like Jorginho Wijnaldum, Stefan de Vrij, Jordi Klaasie, all kind of young players that were entered in the team and basically seemed to be pretty good. You see that AZ as well. That's how they do it all the time. Bringing young players, sell the players, and then bringing new young players. The academy at Feyenoord is very good. I would say at this moment it's better than the academy at Ajax. If you look at the results of our youth teams, you look at the national teams of the under 15s, under 16s. It's basically up there. We deliver as many players to the Dutch national teams as Ajax does, or as PSV does, or AZ does. But we have a problem, and unlike Ajax, PSV, and also AZ, have a second team in the second tier of Dutch football. They play at the under 21 competition, and that's an integral part of the development of young players. If you look at Ajax, you have Matthijs de Ligt, Donny van de Beek, Frenkie de Jong. PSV had players like Memphis Depay or Donyell Malen or Cody Gakpo. They all played games at the second level of the Dutch Football League and then became starters at Ajax and PSV respectively. And we don't have that yet, so that's a pity.
Yeah, this was kind of a really, really big aspect that came up with me and Jacek when we were kind of doing our show notes here. The fact that, like you mentioned, they don't have a club in the second tier in Holland. We did an episode about Barcelona a few weeks ago, and obviously guys like Lamine Yamal, all of them going into the first team so soon. But Barca Athletic playing in the third tier Spanish football is still crucial for the development of these players. A guy like Marc Tosado was a true benefactor of Barca Athletic. You know, he spent 3 years at the second team, really, really developing his quality. And then as a 21-year-old has come into a problem position and grown into a Spanish international and Barca starter within 3-4 months. And that's where I kind of look at this U21 side for Feyenoord playing outside of senior men's football and think, is this really benefiting anybody?
Let's not forget that even Utrecht, they have a second team playing in the Eerste Divisie. So how come Utrecht they have a second team in the Eerste Divisie and Feyenoord does not? That's really I think that shocks me a little bit.
The reason is a historic story. I think in 2008, 2009, there was the Dutch league. They basically thought it would be good for talent development that some young teams from the bigger clubs were going to be involved in the second league, the Eerste Divisie. So Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV all got offered to bring their second team into the second league. But then Feyenoord was in much of trouble with money, almost bankrupt. So Feyenoord said, okay, yeah, well, we don't have that money, so we're not going to do it. And then they invited Twente. Twente had a second team in the Eerste Divisie. Twente also had problems financially, so they also quit with their second team in the Eerste Divisie. Then FC Utrecht took that over. AZ basically promoted from the lower leagues to the second league. So that's why they have 4 teams now: Ajax, PSV, Twente, Utrecht, and AZ all have a team in the second division. And the guy made the decision back then with Feyenoord, Martin van Geel, always defended his choice that it's not good for talents to play in the Eerste Divisie. Talents should play other talent from youth academies. He was basically the only one who said that. And Feyenoord, when he left, said, "Okay, we wanna have our team also in the Eerste Divisie." But then, of course, the Eerste Divisie said, "Yeah, we're full, so you have a problem now." Well, since 5 years, since there is a chance for Feyenoord that they can have a promotion to as the third league, and then if they promote over there to the second league. But if I have to explain how that path goes, I have to take an hour. It's the most ridiculous promotion schedule, so it's not really that realistic. Even though there is a small chance that it's going to be happening this season, but there's so many things going to be involved for Feyenoord to make that happen. But Feyenoord really wants it. The new boss of Feyenoord, Dennis de Kloese, also said that he has ongoing discussions with the Dutch association to say, hey, I want the youth team of Feyenoord also in the second or maybe the third league. There was a talks when Vitesse nearly was bankrupt that Feyenoord would replace them. But it's second guessing. It's hoping that it's going to happen, because I think it's crucial for the development of our younger players. And over at the moment, it's not happening. They play under 21 competitions against smaller teams like Groningen, Twente, and all those kind of clubs.
I think the guy who said that under 21s are better for the development of players than Eerste Divisie wasn't the wisest guy in the history of Feyenoord. I think these reserve teams are pure gold for all these under 19s that are simply too good for the youth level. So they taste the professional football for the first time. Of course, Eerste Divisie is not the highest level. It's pretty low, but it's still better than youth football. And I think it's also an important factor for many players coming from abroad. I spoke to some players from Poland, and they said, "Yeah, I would love to go to PSG, Ajax, or AZ because they have the second team. So I won't play at the youth level anymore. I will get the first taste of youth football when I'm 16, 17. So I really think that all these reserve teams are a superb idea, and I'm really happy that's right now here in Belgium we also have it. I think there are more reserve teams in the second Belgian division than the normal teams. So I really like this trend, and I really hope to see Feyenoord in the Eerste Divisie sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think anybody who wants to hear a little bit more of our thoughts about second team should really go back and listen to that Barca episode, as we really spend a good 20-25 minutes speaking about just how important they can be for a player's development. But just to bring it back to Feyenoord, then, I mean, I mentioned some of those top academy graduates right at the beginning of our section here, but there's one that is obviously bigger than the others, and that's Robin van Persie. Johan, you've obviously been around for his entire career, seeing him go from academy graduate to one of the most prolific strikers in world football. So talk to me a little bit about Van Persie. When did you really see that this was a different player to the others at Feyenoord?
Back then, the media coverage of young teams and especially the youth academies was almost not there. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, so you couldn't get the information. And back then, I never went to Varkenoord, but always this chatter going on. There's one guy coming up. He's really exceptional talented, and it was always Robin van Persie. Everybody always said Ajax has just Van der Vaart and Sneijder coming up, and Feyenoord has at the same time has Van Persie coming up, and everybody was like asking who's going to have the better careers of those three players. So they got also accompanied by Arjen Robben, who had a different path at FC Groningen, a much smaller team. But those guys basically are the same age and all came together from the youth academies of their respective clubs. Robin van Persie always played at the attacking midfield position in the youth. When he got to the first team, because we had John Dahl Thomasson, Danish guy who did very well, who was our number 10. So there was no place for Robin van Persie at the 10 position. So in the year we became the champions of the UEFA Cup, he was the left winger, and you saw he had so much talent in his left leg. He had such his passes were so good. His free kicks were amazing. He was really cool in front of the goal. But also back then there was the story that he was a troublemaker. And one time we had a Champions League qualification game against Fenerbahce in Turkey. And then after that, we had the Super Cup, Euro Super Cup match against Real Madrid in Monaco. And he got kicked out of the team because he had misbehaved himself, because he didn't want to warm up or something like that. So back then he was a troubled kid. And back then he did well. But if you had asked me back then, is he going to be one of the best players Feyenoord had ever delivered at the highest level? I would say no. He went on very young age to Arsenal. Everybody expected him to be back in 2 or 3 years, because everybody knows how that goes. Young players going to England, they don't get a chance, and then they hope to get a chance back at the Eredivisie. But he took a very smart path. Knew he wasn't going to play all the games when he went to Arsenal, because he had Henry and Dennis Bergkamp in front of him. But he soaked up all the things that he taught that they taught him. And then after that, of course, he became a legend. And it was so nice that he ended up his career with Feyenoord. When he came back, everybody was like, "Oh man, it's such a pity that he's played only at the beginning of his career, when he wasn't there yet." Not like Geertruida, when we all knew, okay, this guy is too good for the Eredivisie. It's a good time to let him go. That wasn't the thing with Robin van Persie. He left too early, and he came back too old, basically. So in his prime, he wasn't at Feyenoord, which we understand. Like I said, that's the food chain we operate in. But we've loved him when we saw him at the Dutch national team or playing in England.
Yes, so Geertruida was a ready product. Robin van Persie was more of a prospect back then, and I still remember people saying that he's one of these enfants terribles of football, that he will make problems, and he's a no-go for top clubs because he will destroy the dressing room. But he was very lucky that he got a coach like Arsene Wenger. We spoke about Arne Slot, like his ability to identify players and finding them the right position on the pitch and explaining them the philosophy. I think Arsene Wenger was also one of these guys, in my opinion, one of the greatest coaches ever. And one more thing about Van Persie is that he played in so many positions and roles. As you said, I remember him starting at Feyenoord at left wing. So imagine Robin van Persie in a more traditional winger role back then. Then he was a kind of a second striker. As you said, he started as an attacking midfielder, and then he became a pure number 9. So such a versatile and quality player. In all honesty, if I would make my top 10 favorite strikers in the 21st century, Robin van Persie would surely make it. And he's one of these players that I like to compare players to when I make my reports, because I know that he was so versatile that I will always defend my opinion. So someone will say, yeah, but he's more of a second striker. And I will say, yeah, because Robin van Persie was more of a second striker at some point of his career. So great player and great pride for Varkenoord.
Yeah, whenever I try to compare a player to Robin van Persie, I always need to also put the era of Van Persie that it was. So I remember I compared Nick Woltemade to Robin van Persie, and then I had to put in quotation marks Van Persie 2010 to 2012, because the Van Persie has changed and modified so much over the years that he can really be so many different things. And it just goes to show what an elite talent he is. But Van Persie was one of many, of course, who made it through the academy and into the first team. But I think an interesting aspect about Feyenoord is also how many talents have moved abroad while still being in the academy. Ian Matson, for example, a really good talent who moved quite early to Chelsea. Or also guys like Melairo Bogard, a guy I really, really liked at Hoffenheim, who's now playing at Lask, and a guy like Joshua Zirkzee as well, came through at Bayern then eventually, and then the Timber brothers, which is an interesting topic we'll get to in more depth next week in our episode about the current players in the first team. So why do you think that is that Feyenoord has struggled to let's say pin these players down into contracts that see them make it into the first team?
Back then, of course, we had a lot of competition with the Premier League teams, and there was so much more money involved. They could get the players who are 16, 15 years old, give contracts where were way beyond that we could offer. So back then we lost a lot of talents. Also, guys as Jeffrey Bruma, Karim Rekik also went to England. Nathan Ake, you mentioned him as a graduate of Feyenoord, but he also left at 16 years old when he went to I think he went to City. No, he went to Chelsea. So back then we had a lot of competitions. Of course, with the Brexit, that's done. So the last couple of years, there's not a lot of players from Holland all over the place, but especially at Feyenoord that are not moving to England. At this moment, we're losing. Sometimes we're losing talents, especially to German teams. Bayern München is very hostile sometimes with players. But back then, I think we didn't rate our talents good enough. Back then, if the stories are correct, of course I wasn't there. The story was if you're a youth player and you're good, you get a standard contract. It doesn't matter if you're like the biggest talent, like Robin van Persie, or like an okay talent. Back then, everybody got like a kind of standardized contract. And nowadays, they have like 60 players or something they have on the contract with our youth players, but they're not standardized contracts. They have the bigger talents make way more money, which makes sense, of course, than the lesser talents which get smaller contracts. So I think there's also a different approach to how to handle the contracts of youth players, because you want to keep them all, but that's impossible. But we're doing much better. Yeah.
I think the most recent example is Chivano Veik, who went to Bayern. As you mentioned, these past few years, Bayern really tries to poach all the talents from all the countries in the world. So like Pokemon, you gotta catch them all. And I still remember the case of Joshua Zirkzee. Probably he wanted too much money. Well, not him, probably his parents. Let's be honest. And Feyenoord said that no, we are not going to make an exception for you, and we want to stay in a healthy system when we don't pay 16-year-olds crazy amounts of money. And I think it's a good way to go. It's a good way to go. You don't spoil these young people. You don't make them rich. But I also think that Feyenoord lost the biggest numbers of talents through these past 10 years. Of course, Ajax and PSV, they were losing these 15, 16-year-olds, but I think Feyenoord suffered much more from that. There are many names, and of course, it's not a great thing in my opinion. I think when you're 16-year-olds and Eredivisie, Rotterdam, Feyenoord, PSV, Ajax is the place to be. Is the place to be because they will give you a chance to play first team football early or reserve team. Not the case of Feyenoord, of course. But yeah, the financial aspect is quite difficult. And what you said about Brexit, I met a guy from a top Premier League team last year, and he said that they suffer a lot from that. So the thing they were doing for years, and right now they're kind of blocked. And him, he was a scout, he said that it's really annoying for him, but in my opinion, it's a really good thing for the players.
Yeah, I think it's made the scouting job a little bit more boring for the English club scouts, but I think for wider football, it's definitely an advantage. And I think a lot of this goes back to what we said again with the Feyenoord, the fact that they don't have a team in the second tier of Dutch football. Let's say you're kind of a 16-year-old player at Feyenoord, you're a top talent, but obviously even for you, the Eredivisie is a step too far at the moment. There's really nothing appealing normally for guys like, let's say, Joshua Zirkzee. You can play for a second team in senior football. You probably won't even be playing UEFA Youth League football because Feyenoord have rarely qualified in the past for achievement in the first team. So the best you can do is play U19 first division football in Holland, where end of the day, okay, you have games against Ajax and PSV, but you also have a lot of games against Venlo and Nijmegen, which are probably not as exciting when Bayern comes knocking on the door. And yeah, I think that's a big factor that shouldn't be underestimated, how the U21 team can also be such a good ploy to keep these young talents at the club, to give them something almost as a feeder before they're ready for the first team. And I think that ties in also really well to kind of the final point in the academy section, which is the pathway into the first team. Because for all the quality that one may have in an academy, if there's no pathway in place to actually get them into the first team, everything's for nothing. I think that's kind of a good one to look into here. Johan, I think you mentioned it briefly right at the beginning of this section, how that pathway seems to almost naturally always open more when the first team's doing poorly. I mean, we saw that at Barcelona now as well, where they don't have the financial might they had in previous years, and now every 16, 17-year-old is suddenly getting their chance. But is that also something that's the case with Feyenoord? Or now that they've had success also using academy graduates, is it something that you think will be used more often and we're seeing more academy players come through?
Well, there's a fun thing. We've been praising Arne Slot a lot, and I think that he deserves that. But there's one thing about him that I didn't like. That was hardly looking into our youth academy. Well, of course, he would say, I played Quincy Hartman, and I played Geertruida, and I played Kukcu, and I played Bijlo, which are all graduates of the academy. But younger players never got a real chance. And that's a fun thing about Brian Priske, even though the performances are not as good as Arne Slot, of course. He's been looking at the youth players, like I already mentioned. Seppe Kenya Redmond is the striker of the 21 team, young guy who came over from ADO Den Haag a couple of years ago. I think it was too soon that he played, but with all the injuries, he got a chance. He played 3 or 4 games. And I think that's the way to go. You don't need to buy a third and a fourth and a fifth player, which Arne Slot often asks for. I want another left back and I want another right winger. And Priske basically says, okay, wait, I have this squad. I have Jivai Zegio, which is a youth player from Feyenoord as well. I'll give him a chance. And so he basically got a couple of minutes already. Anthony Milambo made his debut when he was 16, the youngest player ever to play for Feyenoord. In the first season of Arne Slot at Feyenoord. But then 3 years, he hardly plays, even though everybody saw he was talented as hell. But he hardly got a chance. And now Anthony Mulambo gets a chance as a first team player. And he already scored 2 goals in the Champions League.
Yeah, when I mentioned my visit to Rotterdam, and I went to the fan shop. Obviously, I always go to a fan shop to buy a shirt. And I went there and I said, yeah, okay, I want an away shirt and with a name. And they asked me, which player would you like? And I said, Anthony Milambo. And they were like confused, like, okay, and what is his number even? Because there was this table with names and numbers, and Milambo wasn't there. But I knew that he was already promoted to the first team, and he had his number already, but the list wasn't updated yet. So I said, okay, no worries, I know his number. Please put his number. So I still own Milambo's shirt. And that's true that under Arne Slot, he wasn't really playing, and I was starting to get like worried about him. That maybe he wasn't as talented as I thought he was. But yeah, I'm so happy that this season he's thriving, and he's definitely one of the biggest under 21 talents in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I can only say for those interested in hearing more about Milambo and some of the other rising academy graduates, they should definitely join us next week when we go through kind of the present and future in this Feyenoord squad. But for now, Johan, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here. Some really interesting insights on Feyenoord. Can't wait to have you on next week again to go through the individual talents. But for now, where can audiences find you to hear some more about Feyenoord on a weekly basis?
First of all, thanks for having me. It was an honor to be in your show. No, we make a podcast twice a week. It's in Dutch, so if you don't speak our language, then it's gonna be difficult. But we on all the podcast players that everybody knows, we have make 2 shows a week. Every Monday and Thursday we record a show. So if you're really interested, go find Kein Geloel on Spotify or whatever podcast app you're using.
And I'll just say, if you can't spell that, then maybe you shouldn't also be listening to the podcast, because that's maybe a good idea that your Dutch isn't up to the level yet. But maybe you can also learn Dutch by listening. So there's benefits for everybody.
My Netherlands is heel slecht, but I will try. I will try to listen it and make my Dutch slightly better for sure.
Next year we'll be having you, Jacek, in the Kein Geloel to talk about all the talents from Feyenoord in Dutch.
Yeah, and as mentioned, for those hoping to hear some more of Johan in English, he'll be on next Thursday as we go through some of the individual talents, going a little bit more in depth on guys like Anthony Milambo and some other rising stars.